There comes a time when, I think just in marriage, there comes a point where your partner or significant other has developed some significant blind spots and they're not seeing how their actions are affecting you. But in a marriage or a relationship that's been rocked by infidelity, there does come a point post-disclosure where you feel like, look, I'm really needing some things and I'm not getting them. And it's beginning to frustrate me to a point of real toxic internal dialogue. That doesn't mean that you're necessarily contemplating divorce. It doesn't mean that you've filed, but it does mean that internally you're struggling with such toxicity, animosity, anger, rage, hopelessness, and despair that you begin to really kind of look for answers and look for some kind of solution. So today I want to talk to you about some ideas, some helpful points that you can begin to utilize if you're in that kind of situation. It's vital that you understand today is not for you that are like, the way my partner brushes their teeth drives me nuts. The way my spouse eats chips on the couch makes me want to stab myself and them. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about there's something in your partner's life. And again, let me just be honest with you and tell you that this is not just for a betrayed who feels like they're unfaithful, isn't really getting the message. This can also be for the unfaithful who feels like, look, I'm trying, I'm doing everything, but yet there's not reciprocation, or there are things in the betrayed that they're not seeing, and I need them to see this if we're going to make it, or if I'm going to be able to flourish, or if I'm going to be able to come to a point of great unity with them. This struggle is in many ways like quicksand. Everything that you try and do makes you sink further. And if you've ever watched some of these experts on YouTube, they're pretty incredible because they can show you how to get out of anything, right? Duct tape, quicksand. I mean, today I want to help you get out of the quicksand of feeling like nothing's working and I'm so upset, frustrated, toxic. I am feeling hopelessness to a point that I may not have ever felt before. Number one, you have to make sure that you're actually there. It's not enough to just be frustrated. It's not enough to just be like, man, I'm so tired of these issues. Are you sick and tired enough of them to be willing to actually take action? Are you at a point where you're like, yes, Samuel, I am so fed up. I can't keep living like this. So if I utilize these actions and it goes south and it doesn't work and it makes things worse before it gets better, I'm okay with that because out of devotion to myself, unfaithful or betrayed, I can't keep living like this. It's the mentality that says the pain of staying the same is going to be worse than the pain that it's going to take to try and change. And so I'm finally ready to launch out and actually experience the pain that it's going to cause me to change, because that's not going to be as bad as the pain I'm feeling by just sitting here in this cesspool of unfulfilled, unmet, unhealed pain that I'm tired of carrying. Next is you're going to absolutely have to communicate the needs that you have. You're going to have to be willing to have a frank conversation, face to face, with eye contact that says, listen, I can no longer live like this. These are my needs and they have got to become a priority to you. And if they're not going to become a priority to you, I'm going to continue to experience pain and hurt, and I can't keep living this way. And so if you are that frustrated, there's an approach that we recommend called asking your partner to do these things or to begin to start to make changes or to take these things seriously. If that doesn't work, there's a point where you begin to say, I'm telling you that these things have got to be addressed. I'm not expecting overnight change, but they've got to be addressed and they've got to show up on your radar, because I can't keep damaging myself. I can't keep feeling the pain and the agony that I'm feeling because they're not even on your radar. And if asking doesn't work and telling doesn't work, then there's a point where you say, look, I'm going to have to demand this. This needs to happen. And if it's not going to happen, then I need you to know. And then you're going to have to lay out the consequences that's going to come their way. If you need help, it might look something like, listen, you refuse to get help. You just will not get help, unfaithful or betrayed. I can't keep living in the agony that I'm living in with you not getting help. So if you're not willing to get help, and obviously you want to throw out some ideas, online course, expert help, something, then I need you to, maybe it's in-house separation, maybe it's a separation, maybe it's considering filing for divorce if it's that severe. Maybe it's just giving yourself permission to consider separation and consider divorce. Maybe it's telling them, listen, if you're not going to make this a priority, I can no longer make you and your needs or your desires a priority because this is a blind spot that you're not seeing, and I care so much about this blind spot. It means so much to me that I am willing to draw these boundaries, and if you cross these boundaries, if you can't respect these boundaries, then here's what's going to happen. Next is getting expert help. If this has become such an issue, if it's become such a significant blind spot to them, they're probably not going to be able to fix it on their own. And you're going to have to invite an expert third party into the equation to be able to help them see what they cannot see from you or hear from you. It's going to have to be an expert. And then if they say, well, I'm not willing to do that, well, then you have to go back to what I just said, which is consequences and boundaries and the enforcement of those consequences and boundaries. Next is understanding you must make sure that you're at this point, because if you draw these boundaries, and they go south, I mean, they don't respect them, they just completely go, yeah, whatever, you can never make a bluff that you're not willing to reinforce. Because all you're doing is reinforcing to them that they don't need to respect your boundaries, that you're not serious, that this is a mood swing, that you'll get over it, that you'll forget about it, and they won't take your concerns seriously. And it's essential that you never make a bluff that you're not willing to follow through on. Ultimately, this has to come from a place of love. This isn't and can't come from a place of rage and anger. It has to come from a point of real concern for their well-being, because love always acts in the best interest of another. Lust always acts in the best interest of self. And so you want to make sure that you're coming from a position of love that says, look, I want this for you. And obviously I want this for me. This isn't vengeance. This isn't rage from a point of, I just want you to suffer. This is an act of love that says, look, I love you and I love myself. And I'm no longer willing to tolerate this pain and this resistance from you for these things that I need. Okay, I've given you some things to do. Now I'm going to tell you some things to not do. This can't be, number one, you momming them or dadding them. You're not going to be able to keep writing them about this, because you can probably admit you've been trying to ride them. You've been hammering away at this and it has not worked. And so you can't keep doing that. They're only going to then use your response against you and say, well, you're just momming me. You're just controlling me. You're dadding me. All you're trying to do is hammer on me. And so you're going to have to lay out what you need, what you want, and you're going to have to lay out some consequences and then let them decide. You can't keep trying to make them get it when it's clear that their actions are proving to you that they don't get it. The next don't is don't come just from a place of anger. I'm sure if you're feeling these things, you're angry. And I'm sure that you've got a lot of emotion inside, and it's understandable. But if you just come from a place of anger, you're going to lose the authority and the impact that you want to have. And so I would really recommend that if this is resonating with you, take the next few days and begin to address your anger. Begin to really kind of work through understanding maybe where that anger is coming from, and begin to even write out what you want to say to your partner. Begin to maybe write out what you're feeling in a short, concise way, so that when you do have this conversation, it doesn't come out 16 different ways full of rage and anger, because they will then minimize you and not be able to hear you. The next don't is don't get historical. What I mean by that is, if you get into the, for years you've been doing this, I've been trying to tell you for all this time, and you did this, and you did this, and you get historical where all you're doing is lumping on them the history of their failures, their inability to do this, how they've constantly let you down. If you do that, they're going to block you out. It's about being able to say, listen, I've been thinking, or I've been praying, I've been working through these things. I need to kind of share with you that I'm at a point where I can no longer turn a blind eye to these issues. And I'm going to ask you to hear me out the next few minutes, because this is something that is in the inner quadrants of my heart that I'm not willing to let go of. And I'm not going to rage and yell, but I am going to share with you what I'm feeling. I would invite you to maybe take notes and write some things down, but this is coming from the depth of my heart. Next is, don't think that this is all about you. Don't let yourself fall prey to the fact that, well, they just hate me, or they just don't respect me, or they just are angry, or they just don't care, or they just blah, blah, blah. There's issues going on inside of them. There are all kinds of things that are going on inside of them. It's not just all about you. There's all kinds of stuff, I promise you, that are raging inside of them that they don't even know how to make sense of. You can attest to the fact that you can't always make sense of what you're feeling. And so don't fall prey to, they're just doing this to make me feel. I don't think that's the case. Sure, there's some times maybe. I'm sure that has happened a very small percentage of the time. Most of the time, we're unaware of how the drama inside of us is creating such hurt and pain inside of our significant others. The next don't is, and this is probably going to hit you pretty hard. Don't keep sacrificing yourself for their happiness. I meet people time and time again who are like, well, they've got a lot going on at work, or, they're really stressed, or they have this, or they have that. And there comes a point where you say, look, I can no longer keep sacrificing myself for their happiness, because what's going to happen is you're going to wake up down the road and you're going to end up hating them, and you're going to end up having resentment even at yourself because you waited so long and you sacrificed your own peace of mind to keep them happy or to keep them content. And I promise you that will come back up so many different ways, and it'll wreak havoc upon you. And so if you're at this point, I just want to encourage you. This is the time for you to begin to step out and no longer sacrifice your own well-being for them to just be okay. It's time for you to get yourself to be okay. It's time to prioritize your own pain. It's time to prioritize the things that you are really struggling with. That doesn't mean that you need to unload this Excel spreadsheet of all the things that they're doing wrong, all their failures. Again, we're not getting historical. I would invite you to identify somewhere in the neighborhood of 2 to 3 things that are in the absolute mainframe of your heart and say, look, I can no longer turn a blind eye. This isn't for everybody, but I know that this is for some of you that have hit a point of frustration where you're like, look, my significant other won't respect me. Maybe they don't. Maybe they're completely missing it. I don't know. But you've got to take care of you, and you owe it to yourself to stand up for what you need and to defend that, because you are important and you have value and you're not a crazy person. Yes, you probably need some help, some direction, some guidance. That's where the expert third party comes in. But no one's going to prioritize your healing like you can and like you must.